The other thing is when you're presenting, when you're on the presentation mode, you cannot view anything else. You cannot view the action on Zoom. I mean on the what you call it? This
the screen,
Google Meet.
You mean the other participants?
Yeah, correct.
Google Meet. Oh yeah, cannot, because we were usually like once we present using PowerPoint, so we only saw the PowerPoint. I think we can. We have to minimize the PowerPoint.
I was trying to do that. I mean, if I show it on this mode, can you see my screen? I don't know.
Have you tried to minimize the PowerPoint? I mean, we have to have both windows. I think the Google will be at the background. Is the PowerPoint on top of it, so we can't see the Google, is it?
Wow.
Have you tried that?
No.
Right? Disconnected. Hello.
Yeah, I'm here.
You are muted. Both our speaker muted.
Hi. Can you hear
me?
No, I'm okay here.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Hi,
Thank you.
Hi.
Just trying to figure out how to use Google Meet. Not so
user friendly.
Not so user friendly. Let me try share screen again.
Share screen.
There are three options. You can either share entire screen, window, or tab. So I tried sharing window. So now I'm going to try entire screen.
Can you hear me?
See whether that works.
Yes. Usually we are using window. We are sharing window.
Is it?
Yeah. And yours, okay?
Okay. So now I'm sharing entire screen because I never tried that before.
Oh, you share entire screen.
Can you see my whole slide or not?
Yeah, I see your slide and as well as you.
Okay, now because you see, if I do that, I can only see the slide. I cannot see you guys. So it makes it a bit difficult for me to know what people are saying and things like that. Okay, I'll start sharing.
You try share window.
Okay, share window. Sharing window now.
Then you select the PowerPoint, your presentation.
That's the thing. Hang on, because I have it open. And then when I try to select that, okay, got it.
You click on your PowerPoint. Now you share it.
Yeah. But can you see the whole slide or in the? Okay, it's not the whole screen. Whole slide. So I have to go full screen. So
you go full screen. Yes.
Yeah. When I go full screen, then I lose sight of you guys.
Because you were only able to see your PowerPoint.
Yeah. So there's no other way, okay.
The other way is. Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, I think this is right. If you present using the window, you can still change to Google Chrome.
Sorry.
Sorry. If you use the share using Windows, you click the presentation, right? And then we will see the presentation. But then if you want to change, if you want to go see the Google Meet, you can still go to the Google Meet, and we will still be able to see your presentation.
You have to go down. A bit troublesome lah. And your page, you look at your page at the bottom. Yes, not that one. I think the next to it, the three dots. Then you choose
presenter view
screen.
Oh no, that's not.
No, you have to select screen. Okay. You pick again. The maybe escape.
Sorry. And what do you see now?
Your PowerPoint, but not the full presentation yet.
Okay. Anyway, I don't think I want to fiddle with it lah. So basically,
okay.
I will just go on full screen mode. It's fine. I don't see you guys. So I have to just keep talking. If you want to stop me, then you have the moderator or organizer will have to say, just interject and stop me lah.
moderator lah.
I mean, you want to test the screen?
Yep. I'm waiting for my turn, man. So shall I press the present now button?
Yeah, you
Who
can.
am I talking to? Who am I talking to?
Oh, moderator. I'm Yong. Actually, I'm Yong. Dr.
Oh,
Ross.
Yong.
Yeah.
I pressed it. Pressing my present now.
Again, Jaime.
And where's your hat lah? By the way, you're not
I pressed.
delivering on your promo lah in the poster. You have your hat on.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. That's better.
That's
Okay,
handsome.
entire screen,
Otherwise, people can't differentiate between you and me.
No way. I'm. My screen is not on yet,
Not yet.
Can't see anything.
I think, Jaime, your line is a bit slow, is it?
I don't know. I think my. This is. Then the other thing is my computer might be a bit slow already lah. Old already.
Oh.
My PC, but then my PC does. There it is.
Coming,
Well,
is it?
The other option would be to get the organizer to control the slide for you lah, if you prefer that.
Then you have to send us the slide.
Alamak, frozen already.
Mm.
I think better you guys control lah, because I think when he uploads the presentation on his
He'll
side,
slow down. Yeah.
slow down lah.
Young, can you do that?
Yeah. Darius has. Sorry, Jaime has to send us the slide.
All right. So you will control, yeah? The students can control that from there?
Jaime, the student can control, but Jaime has to send us the slide.
I don't know.
Okay. Maybe I call him. Call him to talk to him.
Hi, student. Hi.
Good to see you.
Oh, Dr. Dino. Or Dato Dino.
Hello.
Hello.
What is the capacity for Google Meet? How many people can join?
Meet 100. 100 people. That's why we open for YouTube Live as well.
Okay, so some will join on YouTube Live and some will join here.
I would like I like to remind the student. Would like to ask the student. We are recording this as well, yeah.
Yes, we will be recording this.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone who's already here. You're early. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. We'll be starting in about 2 or 3 minutes. You can also view the webinar through YouTube Live, yeah?
Have you been busy, Surin?
You can say that.
Exactly.
Working on my slides over the weekend.
Okay. Nothing like having a nice coffee and watching an excellent webinar.
Hopefully, he delivers on his promise.
I'm sure.
Dr. Ros sihat dah, Dr. Ros? Tak penat
Ya.
semalam pagi ni? Semalam pagi ni boleh Okey, bagus.
Oh, Cik Rasid. Ya, bolehlah. Hari ni moderator. Alright, so
Assalamualaikum Dr. Ros.
Waalaikumsalam.
Nizam.
Nizam. Yes. Thanks for joining us.
Yep. Okay. Good.
I'm just waiting for a green light to start off. Just to make sure that everybody's ready.
Yep.
Just give me a few more seconds.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Alhamdulillah sini.
Thanks for joining us.
Welcome. Okay.
Dr. Ros, I nampak Dr. Dino tadi kan?
Yeah, yes.
He is my long lost friend tau tu.
Okay. So,
Hi, Dino.
this is Jejak Kasih, ya?
Long time friend tapi not lost. I'm still around.
Hey, Dino. You still recognize my face or not? Fifth Collegian lah.
Handsome as ever.
Hey, how are you, man?
I'm good, sir. I'm good.
Wow. So long already lah, my friend, kan?
Keeping
You
busy
still
lah.
keep your scrambler lah?
Lama dah jual dah.
Wah, ini betul jejak kasih lah Dr. Ros. Ini my old friend ni ya, Dr. Dino ni. Banyak cerita ni, banyak cerita ni.
Tak sangka boleh jumpa dalam webinar.
Nantilah one day brother, nanti kita jumpa. Where are you now?
Kan. Dekat Shah Alam.
I see. You still
No more, I left about 2 years ago already.
I see. So today I'm on the capacity of Geological Society of Malaysia. So currently I'm the president lah.
Nice.
So nantilah kita cerita panjang lagi
Boleh.
kawan. Yeah, okay man. Nice to see you, brother. Take care, you too.
Okay, those who have just joined us, welcome. We will start in a few seconds. Yeah, just still waiting for the green light to start off, to kick off with the session. The team is still working in the background, yeah, to bring you to the webinar as soon as possible. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to see quite a number of participations, yeah, for today's webinar. I'm Rose. Yeah, I will be moderating today's session of the webinar entitled Malaysia's Threat and Treasure: The Threat and Conservation Issues of Malaysian Caves and Karst. As we all know, yeah, Malaysia is blessed with natural karst landscape that provides a magnificent view, with some of it has been known globally for its richness in biodiversity, unique geology, and important historical values. However, it is also threatened by development and mining at an alarming rate, degrading the country's natural heritage. Presently, there is an urgent need to conserve the nature for future, and this includes the awareness to ensure the sustainability in Karst. Society participation is vital in pushing the policymakers in making sure proper protection and management of caves and Karst implemented. International Union of Speleology has announced the year 2021 as the International Year of Caves and Karst. Throughout the world, various activities are being conducted now, but due to the pandemic, they are mostly online. The Malaysian Cave and Karst Conservancy has partnered with the Union to bring today's event to you with the assistance of Ecology Biodiversity Year 1 students. This is a sure way to get the aspiring young minds to be involved in preserving Karst. Let me just introduce you to MCKC. MCKC was established in 2015 to advocate for the conservation of caves and Karst, promote and conduct research, as well as promote proper management of caves and Karst in Malaysia. It was initiated by a motley group of paleologists. This organization is a non-political, independent, non-profit, public interest organization. MCKC strategic plan for conservation of caves and Karst is currently being put together. It will identify key threats to cave and Karst in Malaysia, prioritize strategies to address key threats, elaborate strategies, and formulate a plan of action. It is registered as a society, and its membership is open to everyone who is passionate about conserving caves and limestone areas. Its current membership consists of researchers, conservationists, and caving enthusiasts. The pilot project was in the form of a year-long scientific expedition in Batu Caves with a publication of a book. So details about the book can be obtained through email to MCKC, malaysiancavecast@gmail.com. And okay, that's a long introduction. So before I move on to the session, I would like to remind the panelists. We have two panelists here, Cik Haimir Kamarudin and Mr. Surin Suksuwan. I would like to remind the panelists you have 30 minutes for your presentations. And also, we would like to hear from you, the audience. Please put in your questions in the chat box, and I will forward them to the panelists after their presentations. Okay, without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Haimir Kamarudin. He is a well-known in the speleological circle in Malaysia. He worked for WWF Malaysia from 1991 to 2004 and was sent to explore and survey the caves of Perlis. His work in Perlis contributed to the establishment of the Perlis State Park in the late 2000s. He has traveled extensively to explore and map caves in most parts of Malaysia, plus overseas. He is also involved in planning and developing caves and protected landscapes for ecotourism and management. He is a life member of the Malaysian Nature Society and Malaysian Cave and Karst Conservancy, and also is the immediate past president of MCKC. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Haimir Kamarudin to present.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. See some familiar faces. I'm waiting for my presentation to come on. I will be speaking, there you go. So I will be talking about the introduction, threats and conservation, but specifically I'll be talking about karst areas in Malaysia, plus Sabah and Sarawak, mainly in the peninsula, where limestone comes from, what are the threats to limestone, how cave and karst are useful to humans, and I'll end with issues and conservation matters. And yeah, let's start. So, where do we find limestone? Next, please. Okay, this is a map of Southeast Asia, as you can see. If you notice, the dark areas are where the limestones are. The limestone is concentrated in the North Indo-Chinese area, around the Philippines, along the on the west side of the Nusantara, around New Guinea and Papua New Guinea and Indonesia. And if you look at Malaysia, Peninsular Malaysia, there's some dots over there. Not much in Sabah and Sarawak, but believe me, there's a lot over there too. Next slide. Right, if you look at the peninsula, most of the limestone is concentrated in states of Perlis, up north basically, Perlis, Langkawi. And then you got the large area over in the Kinta Valley, Kelantan, Pahang, and Selangor. The other areas, the other states in Peninsular Malaysia does not have a lot of limestone, but they have some. Okay, so if you take in terms of just wait for a while, yeah. In terms of land area, limestone takes up about 0.4 of 1% of land area, yeah, very, very, very small. So keep that in mind, because I will talk about it a bit later. And by the way, our friends over at Rimba, they say that we've got about 1,393 limestone hills in Malaysia. I got that from Surin, and I think that includes Sabah and Sarawak. I don't think that's just Peninsula, Sabah and Sarawak included. Yeah, next slide, please. Right, what is limestone? I'll just go very quickly, just explain very quickly what limestone is. Next slide, please. So limestone is sedimentary rock, basically made from this stuff that you see on the screen. It's basically made from calcium carbonate derived from ancient coral, plus shells and marine and animal skeletal debris. So this, eventually when the animal dies, they will settle at the bottom of the warm sea normally. And they will this debris, yeah, eventually will get deposited at the bottom of the sea, and the pressure underground will eventually turn it into limestone. Next slide. So limestone is basically sedimentary, as I mentioned, yeah, and over geological periods, a long time. In Malaysia, it's anywhere between about 270 to 400 over million years. Limestone will get pushed up, okay, through earth movements and exposed to the atmosphere. When exposed to the atmosphere, limestone, being calcium carbonate, can be dissolved very easily by very weak acid. And the weak acid over here, the culprit is basically rain. Okay, as rain falls down, it collects the carbon and becomes weak acid, and over time, it will dissolve the limestone and carve out all these nice passages and formations and all those things. So these are all karst features, what we call karst features. Right, next one. So karst features are these, okay? The top left corner, that's Gunung Rapat. If this picture was a bit more to the right, I think you'll see the large Turundum outcrop, which is being quarried at the moment. So this is Gunung Rapat in Ipoh. The bottom right is Tuping Hills over in Perlis, and typical karst features you see over here: steep walls, very tall hills, yeah, steep-sided, and you see dolines. If you look over at the Gunung Rapat, you see lobang, yeah, all the holes there over there on the hill itself. Those are dolines, very, very craggy, typical karst. Next picture. This is also karst Bottom left, I think everybody knows, some of you may have been there already. That's the pinnacles over in Gunung Mulu. And top right is at Gunung Senyum. This is basically a collapsed cave. The roof fell in, and then you have like a wang, a wang. And you see a lot of formations up there. Those are stalactites, stalagmites. These are all very, very typical karstic features. Next, please. Some more pictures of karstic features, stalactites, stalagmites, columns, and various other formations inside the cave. So water that flows, the acidic water that flows through the cave, as it dissolves the limestone, it comes into cave like this, and because of chemical imbalance inside the cave, it will deposit some of the minerals onto the walls, forming all these different formations. So water plays a very, very important role in karstic features. Next, please. So what is karst? Basically, it's land features formed by solution of rock, and the rock being dissolved by weak acid, as I mentioned just now. And these are rocks like limestone, dolomite, and gypsum. In Malaysia, it's predominantly limestone. There's still a lot of dolomite. I think you find a lot of dolomites over up north. So in these talks, I'll refer mostly to limestone. So why is limestone important? This is the crux of the matter, Why is limestone important? Why do we want to care a lot about limestone? Next slide, please. So limestone is known to hold many unique plants and animal species. Over here, it says that about 1,300 species, which represents about 14% of the peninsula's flora, grows on limestone. Remember I said just now less than 1%. So less than 1%, of land area holds about 14% of the peninsula's flora. That's very, very significant. And it goes on to say, even on hills thought to be relatively well known, new species continue to be discovered, such as 3 new species recently discovered at Gunung Kantan. So what this tells us is that a lot of limestone hills in the peninsula are not well investigated. And even Gunung Kantan, relatively well investigated because it's very, very accessible. Still, new species can be found. Even at Batu Caves, not long ago, a friend of ours found springtails, new species of springtails in Batu Caves. And Batu Caves have been studied a lot since close to 120 years, a bit more. So we still find new species. The thing is, because a lot of limestone areas are not well documented and not well visited by scientists. Next one, please. So these are the areas where, and this is the areas where, this is the reasons why limestone is important, for plants and animals, because they have very, very dry surface area. They are very craggy. They've got a lot of different microhabitats within them. So such a small area, one hill, it's got many different types of microhabitats. So a lot of plants and animals have adapted to live in these kind of places. And because also that a lot of these places, there's no water. As I mentioned just now, water basically dissolves limestone because limestone has a lot of crack and fissures. When they have a lot of crack and fissures, water will just flow right through, dissolve the limestone, and the surface is very, very dry. And you see, these are pictures of caves. Caves are very, very dark. So plants and animals that live in limestone caves also have to adapt to these kind of places. Next, please. Right, just to show you some animals that live in caves. The one on the left is the Liphius batuensis. It is only found on the hill of Batu Caves, predominantly. Well, I think quite a lot over in the dark caves. I'm sure they are elsewhere on the hill, and it's also found on the another hill nearby, which is Anak Takun, and they are found nowhere else in the world. Normally, when we find Liphius spiders on limestone, they tend to be found only on that. They tend to be endemic to that particular hill or groups of hill around that area. The one on the right is a Liphius spider, which we found in Kedah recently, not very long ago, but because very few specimens are available, are found, so we have not taken any specimen for ID. So that one has not been described yet. So we're not sure whether it's related to any other leafishes around this area, maybe Baling or the limestones over in Yala, next door from Kedah, or it's a new species. We're not sure. We don't know yet. Next one. Right, bottom left. That's a white millipede. I won't bother to pronounce the name, but it was found by McClure, and this particular millipede was found over in Ulu Muda, and the only other ones that we know about is this kind of this species. I mean, this genus is over at Batu Caves, and so we're not sure whether this is the same species as the one found over at Batu Caves, or this is just this is a new species. We don't know yet. And to the right is snails. Basically, there are a lot of snails that is found only on limestone. I think Ruben and Jun Kit, they estimate 50 to 75% of land snails in Malaysia are found only on limestone and nowhere else. Next, please. So, just to repeat again, many plants and animals have adapted to living on this dry, rocky, dark habitat that over time some eventually become new species. Many species found on limestone hills are very different from those found in the surrounding areas. And this is why limestone, together with their caves, are often referred to as an island surrounded by a sea of rainforest. Okay, I tried to find a photo with limestone hill surrounded by a sea of rainforest, but nearly impossible because it's all development or plantations or something like that. So very difficult to find. And even if they are, I think nobody took pictures of them anyway. Right, let's go on. Yes, so this petai and durian. So you'll be wondering what the heck we're talking about durian, petai. All of us, most of us like durian, some of us like petai. But the bats that live over in limestone caves, they are important pollinators for these fruits. Yeah. So without them, we probably won't get all these things. So we have to say thank you to them. So caves are hosts. Okay, caves host these animals, the bats, and they go out and they pollinate all these plants for us. So they are very, very important for agriculture. Next. They're also important. Hang on. Right. Okay. Okay. Now, caves are also very important places for archaeological and paleontological finds. Yeah, because they've got very stable conditions in the cave, and at the overhangs outside. That helps preserve archaeological and paleontological information and artifacts. Bottom left, I think a lot of us know what that is already. There's a tiger, and that's over at Naga Mas near Ipoh. And then top in the middle is Stogorden. Was discovered by Rose Fatiha and gang not long ago. It was just last year. So that was a very, very significant find. And because limestone is made from marine animals, so sometimes you do find fossils of marine animals inside limestone. Next one. Right. People do live, prehistoric people do live over in caves were used for human habitation for millennia now, a long time. And then they are very suitable because they provide shelter. They don't have to build anything, it's already there, they just use it. So again, many remains of their food, their other cultural artifacts can be found in caves also. And these are drawings made by prehistoric people depicting their lifestyle or whatever. Next, please. Now we talk about some issues and threats to cave and limestone. Okay, I'm about 15 minutes past already. Just nice. Right, limestone it's a natural resource too. So unfortunately, in East Asia and Southeast Asia, the demand for limestone has been increasing a lot, mainly due to the demand for cement. It is no different in Malaysia. Next slide. So this is a small illustration, okay, of some uses of limestone, not everything, but some uses. The main uses used for limestone when they blast is for cement, okay, on the right side. And from cement, they make mortar, and they use it to make concrete for buildings and all that. They also use it for aggregate, that means rocks, yeah, of different sizes to make railroads and bridges and roads even. It's used in glass making also. It's also very important in agriculture because they neutralize acidic soils. And they've got a lot of other uses also. They are used a lot for industrial and for household products. Next, please. And this is the result of blasting and exploitation of limestone. It's not very nice, unfortunately, but it's something that we have to try to live with sometimes. No choice. Next one. Another picture. This is a smaller hill. It's practically gone. I think the last time I passed by, it's gone already. It's not even there anymore. There's a lot of hills that's met this kind of feat already. I think there's one hill, I can't remember the name now, over in Sungai Lembing in Pahang, basically flat. They're using it as a car park now because it's so flat that it's like cement, so they park their cars over there. Next one. I just want to show you a cartoon by Lat, and it just shows some buses passing by and look, wow, beautiful on one side of the hill, and unknown to them on the other side, they are busy digging the limestone hill. Okay, next one. Right. Tourism. Caves are very fragile environments. Yeah. Many times we try not to go into cave with too many people because we don't want to destroy habitats. Even when you walk on the floor of a floor of the cave is habitat actually. So we try to just use one trail and leave the rest of the floor alone. In this case, it's not very sustainable. Look at that. There's about, if I counted the last time, it was about nearly 40 people over there. And it's really no use bringing that many, go back to that slide, please. It's really no use bringing that many people inside a cave because most of them, the only reason that I would bring people to caves because I want them to learn something. I want to spread awareness on caves. So I sort of sacrifice some caves for a little bit. Even then, I try to control. But this is a little bit too many. There's nearly 40 people. People at the back there is probably having their own conversation. So whatever the guy in front there is trying to say, they probably won't listen. To them, a cave is just a cave. It's just dark, and they don't learn anything. So I would normally try to keep it up to maximum 15, depending on the cave. Around 10 would be just nice. Then you can control numbers of people, what people do, where they go, and all that. Yeah. Next picture, please. Yeah. This is development in caves, which is not very sustainable again. Let's start with the one on the left. Both are in Perlis, but the one on the left, number one, the walkway is too large for this cave. A cave of this size is just overwhelming. When I went to this cave, the only thing I saw is just walkway, metal and whatever all over the place, and it's not very nice. It's an eyesore. So that's number one, which is bad. Number two, they built it right underneath where bats roost, which is not good. You have guests walking by, the bats might poo onto them, which is not so good. And number three, you are disturbing the bats, so that's not the right thing to do. Typically, I would try to move the walkway to the left or to the right somewhere where you do not disturb bats. And of course, I wouldn't have a walkway like this. I would make it a bit less intrusive. Maybe about just a few feet above the ground and nothing like this. Nothing, with a lot of metal. On the right, I'm not sure whether you can see it or not, but the view is from a ledge looking down into the passage. Yeah, this is also in Perlis. Also bad, very, very bad development, they removed the floor, or rather they graded the floor to put cement, and that's not the right way to do. In any development like this, you do the development around your natural resource, not change the resource to fit your development. So this is bad, and pretty disheartening when you see this kind of stuff. I don't know whether you can see at the back, at the middle top side of that picture, there's some pinkish red color. That's another thing which is not good. Trying to change the view of the cave, that means by putting colored lights, which is not good. I never like to put colored lights. I normally either use slightly yellow, warm white, or white. That's it. But never that kind of colors. But some people like it. They say it looks nice. Yeah, but it's unnatural. Next one, please. There is also a lot of demand for speleotherms. Yeah. So these are some speleotherms already on the floor. It's been damaged by people who are collecting. Those guys standing over there are not those guys. Are not those people collecting. Yeah, they are my friends that came with me. Just a few months ago, before I surveyed this cave, it was nearly pristine. And then when I came with my friends, came by, and we saw this, it's heartbreaking. It looks like a war zone. Next one, please. And this is a picture of speleotherm again, arranged by the side, and I guess these guys are coming back to pick it up for sale. Next one, please. This is what they do. They basically sell. So they mount it, okay, in pots or whatever, make it look nice. People come in busloads. Actually, this is in Gunung Kriang near Alostar in Kedah, and they sell it. This is illegal, but they still do it. And if you look at the one at the bottom, people buy those things because they like to put their bonsai plants nearby, and it looks like some looks like a mini guilin or something. But it's not very nice. They shouldn't be doing this. They are really spoiling caves. And when we go in, basically it's all gone. It's all harvested. Yep. Next one, please. And when you let people into caves, this is what happens. Graffiti all over the wall. That's why, again, we always stress that we should only bring small numbers of people, not large, so that you can control what your guests do, so that they don't end up doing this kind of stuff. Of course, the caves that you bring them to also should be properly managed if possible. So I try to bring people to caves that has some control in access. People can't just go back there on their own. Very few of those caves, unfortunately. Next one. Buffers around limestone hills are very, very important. There are a lot of limestone related plants that live in the buffer zone area at the bottom of the hill. That's so we should keep the buffer, and then the other thing is to keep development away from the bottom of the hill. When you have no buffer, people start planting, and then when they plant, they also burn because they have leaves and all that. They start burning, and the fire can spread onto the hill, like what happened in 2016 on the south side of Batu Caves. I think about 20 over hectares was burnt, and we don't know what we lost over there. Okay, so buffer is very, very important. Next, please. Oh, this is a picture. This is a satellite picture of Batu Caves, and if you look, no buffer here. Basically, development has come right to the bottom of the hill, and there's no buffer at all. Next one, please. Buildings at caves are also a problem. It's a very, very, very sensitive situation. So what we should do is allow older or current temples like this one to continue, but we have to try to keep new ones from coming up, from establishing themselves. Because once they are established, then it's very difficult to stop it. So we have to start trying to stop it before they even start. Yeah. So buildings like this very, very damaging also to cave environments. Next, so we looked at cement, aggregate, and all those things. People blast limestone to exploit, and to get raw materials out of limestone hills. But the thing is, there are other non-monetary value to limestone hills. We've got landscape value, recreational value, religious value, biodiversity, and other scientific value. But people don't see that. Unfortunately, decision makers and people in the private sector, especially quarry operators, they only look at the rock. They don't look at all this value. And we as a society, we have to start looking at all this and impose these values onto them too. They have to see it. Next point, please. So when I talk about landscape value, it's like this, areas like this. Gua Musang. Can you imagine Gua Musang without limestone hills or caves? I can't. And Perlis, I used to work in Perlis a lot. Bukit Cabang, the one bottom right. I can't imagine Perlis landscape without these two. To me, that represents Perlis. And then the top long one, that one is Ipoh. And my hometown is Ipoh, and I used to, as a small boy, I used to go back to Ipoh quite a bit. And I was always fascinated by limestone. I mean, when you see limestone, you say, we are coming home. We are nearby already. We are about to reach. Of course, in those days we didn't have the north-south highway. So Ipoh is not Ipoh without limestone. So that's landscape value. Next one, please. And we have recreational value. You got people doing caving, like the one on the left. That's my son, by the way. And then got people doing rock climbing in the middle. And there are also people who just trek around to do, just to climb hills and do photography, maybe bird watching. So it's got recreational value, okay? And I'm sure that generates a lot of income for local people around there. Next one, please. Religious value we talked about just now. Basically, religions of the East, East Asia, the Buddhist, the Taoist, Shinto, and all these other religions, they like to have their temples inside caves for whatever reason. But it has to be controlled, yes. But there is a value that they place on the hill, which sometimes helps in the conservation of the hill also. One good example is Gunung Kantan, because Gunung Kantan has a temple over there. And I think one reason why it hasn't been quarried is because the temple is there. Although now I think there is a move to try to get them out. So hopefully they can stay put. Next one, please. And of course, yes, we'll be talking about biodiversity and other scenic value. These are some of the animals that you find over in limestone hills. Okay, next one. Right. Now, what you see above ground is just the tip of the iceberg, okay? Because most of the limestone is actually underground. Like Perak, the Kinta Valley, my estimation, maybe somewhere between, 20%, maybe 25% is above ground, and the rest is all underground. If you go to KL, it's even lower than that. Out of all the limestone in KL, in the Klang Valley, only 3 hills jut out above ground, which is Batu Caves, Anak Takun, and Takun. So not many. So the point is that these are the parts of the limestone that has value. Okay, the 4 values I talked about, these are the ones that has value. The ones underground doesn't have value. So what we should be doing is that we should be encouraging maybe force decision makers to accept the fact that we should start going underground. Then companies also, mining companies should also start going underground and do mining underground instead of mining the resource that is above ground. Yes, it is easy, but sometimes we have to do it the hard way. Next one, please. Okay, other issues that I just want to mention. I think I know I'm 29 minutes already. There's very few limestone hills in protected areas. I hope Surin might cover some of these points. Few limestones are in protected areas. There's a need for more baseline information. I think over the years there have been there have been more. Yeah. I'm going to finish already. I think this is the last 2 slides. Need for more baseline information. Land is a state matter, so that complicates things because there are about 13 states in the federation, and everybody's got their own thing. So how do you try to get everybody to go the same path? Legislation enforcement to protect hills and its contents is nearly non-existent. So it's something that we have to look at. There's a need to balance conservation and exploitation because obviously we all still do need cement. So we have to try to balance this somehow. We need to raise awareness and appreciation. Next one, please. And conclusion. So limestone hills and caves are, as I mentioned just now, are like islands surrounded by a sea of rainforest and development now. They are very, very different, yeah? Anything on limestone, normally you don't find in the surrounding rainforest. They contain unique plants and animals. They are very high in endemism. They are not well studied. There's a lack of awareness among the general public. And there's this negative perception of limestone hills and caves. Limestone, the rock is just seen as a rock, a hunk of rock. And the cave is basically seen as just a dark hole in the ground. Very dark, dirty, and yucky. So it's a problem. So it's something that we have to try to go around with. Next one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jaime, for the very interesting presentation. Also, this is where I learned that Karst is much more important than geology, probably quaternary paleontology, from all these other Karst passionate enthusiasts. All right, I've seen a few questions already posted in the chat box. Thanks for that. But we will try to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the next presentation by Surin. But before that, let me introduce Mr. Surin. Okay, his main interest is in biodiversity conservation and natural resource management, particularly protected area planning and management, forest landscape management, and also plant conservation. Mr. Surin has started becoming interested in caves as a student at Leeds University in the UK, where he was a member of the Caving Society. Later on, he was active in the caving group of the Malaysian Nature Society and took part in the caving course organized by the group, as well as caving trips. He became a volunteer at the dark caves at Batu Caves for a short period of time in the late 1990s. So through his involvement in a project on the conservation and a development of Police State Park in between 2000 to 2003 and other subsequent projects, he became more involved in cave and karst conservation. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Surin to present his talk.
Thank you, Rose. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. Just give me a minute while I share my screen. Yeah. Can you see my screen now? Can anyone see my screen?
Clearly for me.
Okay, good. Thanks. Not very familiar with my Google Meet. So yes, hi everyone. As Dr. Rose has mentioned, I'm Surin, and I'm really happy to be doing this presentation, especially in such great company. Dr. Rose and Jaime and some familiar faces as well in the audience. Jaime has been caving since I was still in school, so definitely has got a lot of experience in the cave. So my presentation is complementary to Jaime's presentation, but we'll be looking more at the conservation side of things, the policies, and so on. So I just had a very brief kind of coordination with Jaime. I just WhatsApped him and said, "Oh, what are you putting in your slides?" And he said, "I'm just talking about this and this," and that's it. And so as it happens, I think there's not much overlap at all. I think the slides are complementary. And another thing I just want to point out is that this is Google Meet. I'm not very familiar with it. I was trying to change the background to a limestone background, couldn't do that. So in the end, I opted for this under the sea kind of backdrop. And those of you who have been paying attention to Jaime, you will understand why this has anything to do with limestone. So maybe we can talk about that later during Q&A to just check whether you are, in line with my thinking. Also, I want to point out that this talk is specifically is targeted to the Ecology and Biodiversity students actually. So that's why there's a slightly academic kind of approach in these slides. Pardon me for that, but yeah, I mean, my key audience are the students, so I'm hoping that they will find the slides useful for their studies. So I'll start now. So in this presentation, I'll talk a little bit about the overview on cave and karst. A lot of it has been covered by Jaime actually, so I'm just going to touch on very few key things. I'll be talking about the issues and threats a little bit more. Jaime has also covered that, but I'll go a little bit in a different angle. And I'll talk about policies and laws, and that's basically the most the main content of the presentation actually. I'll go through some of the key policies and laws in Malaysia that they are related to cave and karst, and then we'll close off with a few key recommendations. So yeah, I mean, looking back again at the distribution of limestone hills in Malaysia, I think Jaime did share a similar map. This particular map I picked from JMG, or Jabatan Mineral and Geoscience, and I like this one because it shows both Peninsular Malaysia and the states of Sabah and Sarawak. So you can get an overview. And for Peninsular Malaysia, the limestone hills are mainly found in the northern part of Peninsular Malaysia, and you can generally divide the limestone areas into four main parts. The limestones of Kedah and Perlis, the kind of central western side of the peninsula, mainly in the Kinta Valley, and then the northeastern and central eastern areas, Kelantan and Pahang. A lot of people are not aware, I mean, that we have a lot of limestone in Kelantan actually. It's just that people are more familiar with the Perak one. Every time you go up the North-South Highway, you can see the limestone hills there very prominently. The limestone hills in Kelantan, on the other hand, are quite remote. So most people have not really visited the limestone hills there, but actually there's a lot of limestone in those areas. And then the most southern part of the limestone distribution in Peninsular Malaysia is around Selangor, around the Batu Cave area. And then there are one or two very small outcrops in Johor and also in Negeri Sembilan, but they're really small, and most people don't talk about them much. And over in Sabah, you can see that mainly they are found in the north, eastern and eastern end of the state. And then in Sarawak, mainly in the northern side near Gunung Mulu, also around the Goniah area, a few in the central area, and then around Bauk, which is in the south side, which is closer to Kuching. Right, so just to summarize very briefly some of the key characteristics of Malaysian cave and karst. Jaime has mentioned this before. Limestone areas only occupy a very small area of Peninsular Malaysia, something like 0.4% of the land area of Peninsular Malaysia. Also, the limestone hills tend to be relatively small. I mean, if you look from the top with Google Map, you can see that even like Batu Caves, it's not really that big an area. Usually the area would be about 1 square kilometer or less, only a few limestone hills are larger than that for Peninsula Malaysia. But in Sarawak especially, you do get some very big limestone hills, especially in the Gunung Mulu area. Limestone hills tend to be relatively low because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of weathering. They dissolve in water. Then you have sinkholes, they cave in. So generally, they don't get very tall. But having said that, the ones in Sarawak are particularly tall because they can reach up to 1,700 meters in Gunung Api and Gunung Merarat in the Mulu National Park. And you can see the photo on the right, the very famous pinnacles that's in the Gunung Mulu area. And the Gunung Mulu National Park also houses the most extensive cave systems in Malaysia. Every year, the length of the caves keep going up and up, not because more caves are being formed by the year, but the explorers, find new passages, they connect different cave systems, blah, blah, blah. So the length as the year goes by increases, I think, easily a few hundred kilometers now, maybe even more. I'm not sure. I haven't really been keeping in touch with that. But one thing that is still a record, not just for Malaysia, but for the world, is that the world's largest cave chamber is in Sarawak, and that's called the Sarawak Chamber. There are some very large caves in Vietnam as well, and maybe one day they'll find a larger chamber, but so far Sarawak still has that record. And it's also got the largest cave passage in Malaysia, which is the Deer Cave. And the other significant thing about limestone or karst in Malaysia is that we have the southernmost limestone areas in mainland Asia. Yeah, so well, as it is, Peninsula Malaysia is already right at the southern tip of the Asian landmass, so not counting the islands of Indonesia and so on, right? So the mainland area, we have the southernmost limestone outcrop, and Butter Cave is the one that is the southernmost and significant. As I mentioned, there are one or two areas further south, but they're very small. So Butter Cave is the most significant one in the south. Right, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about limestone plants because a lot of studies have been done on the limestone plants. There have been studies done also on the fauna or the wildlife found on limestone, such as lizards, trapdoor spiders, blah blah blah. Yeah, I mean, they are also significant, but with plants, there have been a more systematic study. So we actually have an idea about what plants are found on which limestone hills has got the most number of rare or endemic plants and so on, right? So it's a good indicator of the biodiversity and endemism of limestone plants. So, and of the biodiversity of limestone in general. So for those of you who are not familiar with the term endemism means anything that's found in one particular area and not anywhere else. So a plant in this case may be endemic to one hill, and that's what sometimes people say hyper-endemic, or it may be endemic to Peninsula Malaysia or Malaysia as a whole, meaning you say it's found elsewhere, but only in Malaysia, but not anywhere else in the world, right? So, but in this case, when we talk about endemism, it's mainly restricted to one or a few limestone hills. So, of the more than 1,200 plant species that have been discovered or documented so far on limestone hills, 261 are endemic to Peninsula Malaysia. So that means that 261 of these plants that you find on the limestone hills in Peninsula Malaysia are not found anywhere else except on those except on the limestone in Malaysia, right? And 130 of these 1,216 plant species are only found on limestone and not in other habitat. Okay, so this is quite significant because if you remember, the limestone areas collectively only accounts for something like 0.3% of the land area in Peninsula Malaysia. So having 0.3% harboring 14% of the plants in Peninsular Malaysia, that's really significant. So they're disproportionately containing a higher level of plant diversity than other habitats. Okay. Now, when we talk about limestone conservation, the complicated thing is this, because the plants are distributed in very complicated ways. So even though we have 1,216 plants on limestone hills, each hill, may only have at most 200 or 300 plant species, right? So just conserving one or a few limestone hills, you will not get the full range of the species, right? You'll miss out on some species. So that's the complicated thing. Different hills have different assemblage or combination of species. And some of the really rare plants are only found from one or a few hills, okay? So there's been studies done by Dr. Rustiu and a team on this. And you can see as well in the chart on the right where so you can see the number of plant species on the x-axis, and then the number of hills on the y-axis. So what does it mean? So some limestone hills may harbor up to 17 rare species. So you can see that at the extreme end of the chart. Okay? Very few hills have a lot of rare species. Okay? But more hills, in this case, between 25 to 30 hills, have got at least one rare species. Okay? I've got a little exercise of this just to see whether we understand the distribution of limestone hills, plant species on limestone hill. Let's see whether it works or not. Okay, so given this situation, basically it means that you need to protect many limestone hills, not just a few. And also you need to target the limestone hills that have different kinds of microhabitat, different niches, different, topography of the hill, could be an overhang, it could be under the cracks, it could be in the very shaded areas. Some areas are more moist, some areas are dry, so on, right? So there's a diversity of microhabitat. So we want to protect those hills that have a lot of diversity of microhabitat. They are likely to have more plant species and the more rare plant species as well. So let's go on to the little exercise that I have. Okay, so you can see you have 5 hills here, and hill 1 to hill 5, and I've used letters to indicate the species, right? So you have species A, species. So hill 1 has got species A, B, G, H, and I. Hill 3 has got species A, C, E, and F. So let's say these are the unique species. Probably there are many other species, but we're only focusing on the unique species. Now, if you want to save all the species, how many of the hills do you need to protect? It's a bit like a quiz. So if you want, you can type your answer in the chat. I can't actually see your chat because I'm showing my screen right now, and Google Meet doesn't actually allow me to look at your answers, but never mind. Just go ahead and type your answers. I'll give you a few seconds to do that because it's not like really it's not rocket science. I think you can figure it out. So basically, I'm going to give you the answer now, right? So you need to conserve all those hills except hill 2 because both species A and species C can be found. Species A can be found on all the hills, and species C can also be found on hill 3. So if really you need to sacrifice one hill for quarrying or whatever, then it's got to be hill 2. Yeah. So you got to understand how it works, right, with regard to the diversity of plants on different hills. Okay. Thanks for that exercise. For you, you've actually tried to answer. What are the other issues concerning Malaysian caves and karst? Right. So my email has also mentioned that when he looked at Google Map or Google Earth, he found that most of the limestone hills are actually not in forested areas anymore, and that's confirmed by scientific research. Ruben Clemens has done some mapping there, and we found that the majority of limestone hills are actually either at the forest edges or within areas that have been deforested, as you can see on the image of Batu Caves, where there's no forest. There are no forests around Batu Caves, mostly buildings and roads and so on. And the other thing that's also quite alarming about our limestone hills, that 73 out of 445 limestone hills in Peninsular Malaysia, and that could be a bit of outdated already. And I think the number of limestone hills have gone up, but something like 16% of limestone hills either have been quarried or are being quarried, right? So that's quite a large proportion of our limestone hills. And some early work done by Dr. Ruth Q has shown that 18 limestone plant species are probably extinct. Now, extinction is quite a complicated thing, right? In order to prove extinction or to declare a species extinct, they have to be lost for many years, right? So you can't say like, you can't find this plant now and immediately you declare it extinct. No. So you actually have to allow for sufficient time to pass and sufficient effort be made to locate the supposedly extinct species before you can confirm that all the species are gone. Now, of the 18 Karst species that Dr. Q mentioned in her paper in 1991, I did a search on Google, and I found 2 that are confirmed to be extinct by Q, which is the leading research institution on plants, the Q Botanic Gardens in the UK. So these 2 species, which are Pipercolinum and Impatiens cryptogonura. Pipercolinum is related to our wild pepper. Impatiens cryptogonura is a relative of balsams. Kembung, I think you know kembung, right? When you were kids, you play with the little seed and they'll explode when you throw them at each other. Okay, so this is a cousin of it. Both extinct, sorry, gone from the wipe out from the face of the earth. They're never coming back. Okay, what are the other threats? The key threats to cave and karst, and I may mention some of them. Quarrying, that's the big one, because when you quarry, you lose the whole hill. Land clearing, so some people do try to plant stuff on limestone hills. They may clear the limestone hill, or they might clear it to do other things, right? Flooding, sometimes in some areas. In the Kenyir Lake, for example, there are quite a number of limestone hills that are either partially or fully submerged under the lake, and that's due to the impoundment of the dam when the water level goes up after the dam is constructed. At a more local level, some caves can be damaged as well when you have the obstruction of water flow. So if you do any kind of structure that prevents the water flow, the water goes into the cave gets flooded, the wildlife in the cave will also be affected by that. And any cave structure as well may probably be washed out over time. Fires, a major threat to limestone. Some of these hills can be quite dry, they are exposed. And as you can see in this picture in Batu Caves, the Batu Hill, there was a major fire in 2016 that wiped out almost one side of a hill, of the hill. You have activities around the hills, logging activities, for example, that can also cause disturbance and unsustainable collection of resources, whether they are speleothems. I think you saw the photos in Jaime's slides just now, where people are hacking off bits of the limestone to sell. Those are what they call speleothems. Guano, which are the bat caves, swiftlet nests, ornamental plants on the hill, all those kind of things. So these are the threats to the cave and karst. And also when you have temple construction, which may lead to the destruction of some caves, and recreational activities if not done carefully. So I think you've all heard of the news in recent times. We've seen a lot of hills that have been under increasing threat. There's a lot of focus on Gunung Kantan now, for example, where you have the 2 remaining sections of the hill under threat, section C and D. and there's also an ongoing campaign about that. So I don't really need to talk about that in detail, but I think all of us are aware that our caves and karst are under increasing threats. So let's look at what can be done, and you can see that some of the limestone hills have actually been included in protected areas. So those colored areas, you can see where we have limestone hills within the protected area. So based on the analysis done by the RIMBA team using their limestone or karst database incorporated with the Malaysian protected area data set, the number they came out with was about 161 of the more than 1,300 limestone hills in Malaysia within protected areas. That's equivalent to about 11.55%. That means almost 90% of our limestone hills remain unprotected. And most of these limestone protected areas are in Sabah, actually. Right, so what are the key policies and laws related to cave and karst in Malaysia? I've listed a few and we'll go through them slowly, one by one. Okay, so on the National Policy on Biodiversity 2016 to 2025, for example, we have Goal 3, which is to safeguard all our key ecosystem species and genetic diversity. Target 7 of that Goal 3 is to have our vulnerable ecosystem and habitats protected or restored, and limestone hills is listed as one of the vulnerable ecosystems and habitats. Right? And there are some indicators as well in terms of, targets, KPIs, right? So 50% of all ecosystems to be mapped by, all the ecosystems be met by 2020, which is supposed to be last year, and probably I think you can see that we haven't really met that target. And by 2025, 50% of these ecosystems are to be legally protected. And then another key indicator, 7.2, 20% of all identified degraded vulnerable ecosystems are to be under rehabilitation programs. Now, I don't know whether anyone has actually tried to restore limestone hills or not, but you will see that it's really quite a major task once a limestone hill has been damaged. Another very significant policy document in Peninsular Malaysia is the Rancangan Fizikal Negara 3 or National Physical Plan 3, right? So there are many action plans within that document, but the one that is relevant to limestone hill is Tindakan KD 1.1A. Don't ask me how they do all this coding of the action plans, but basically that tindakan is about mewartakan habitat yang terancam sebagai kawasan perlindungan. It's similar to what is captured in the National Biodiversity Policy earlier. So basically it's about the gazettement of habitats, threatened habitats as protected areas. And you can see that under point 2, under that tindakan KD 1.1A, they have listed some of the key areas. I've highlighted in yellow those areas that are limestone areas. So you can see that Gunung Kantan is included there, Gunung Senyum, Jebak Puyo in Pahang. So this is a national planning document, right? So I'm wondering whether do people actually look at these planning documents? Do the state government take into consideration what is in the federal planning document when they decide which limestone hills that they want to blast, right? So something to think about. This is pretty much the same information, but captured in a map form. So there's some very nice maps in the National Physical Plan. I do recommend that you look at it. You can learn a lot from there. So you can see that limestone hills are, so the priority ones are mapped within the plan. Okay, but in order for the National Physical Plan to be operationalized on the ground, the same policies, the same land use plan needs to be captured in the local plan. The local plan are the Rancangan Struktur Negeri. Each state would have one Rancangan Struktur, and Rancangan Tempatan, local plan. Right. So these are plans that are gazetted. Once they're gazetted, that means whatever areas that are identified in the local plan, they have to be implemented on the ground. So if an area is identified as protection, they need to be protected. But again, is there alignment? Is the local plan following what is mentioned in the National Physical Plan. That is something that only the people in that particular area have the right, or local standard, as we call it in legal terms, to challenge the authorities, right? So if you think that your local plan is not in alignment with the National Physical Plan or National Biodiversity Policy, then you need to challenge. And, you know, during the public participation process, for example, that's where you get to air your views. All right, and another important document is the Garis Panduan Perancangan Pemeliharaan dan Pembangunan Kawasan Sensitif Alam Sekitar, or KSAS. So these are the environmentally sensitive areas as identified in the National Physical Plan. They have some specific guidelines or Garis Panduan in terms of how these areas, these KSAS areas, can be developed or conserved, right? So again, kawasan Batu Kapur or limestone areas are mentioned there. But the interesting thing here is that this guideline recognizes that there is a conflict. There's often a conflict between the use of the limestone hills as either a source for minerals or as a heritage. Okay, so what it's saying in this guiding or Garis Panduan is that if the limestone hills have nilai warisan yang unik dan tersendiri, then they should be conserved. But if they don't have this kind of nilai-nilai warisan, then they can be used for quarrying. Okay, so a lot actually depends on availability of information. So that's why having the information, the scientific research done for the limestone areas is really important, because it can decide whether a hill gets kept or not, or blasted. Yeah. So there's also Garis Panduan 8.3, which is specific on the management of limestone hill and caves. Actually, it deals a lot with tourism and cave management rather than the management of the whole limestone hill. And then there's also more specific guidelines or Garis Panduan, which is on Batu Kapur and Gul, cave and Karst. And you can see what are the allowable and non-allowable activities under these Garis Panduan. And then we have the National Strategy for Plant Conservation, and Target 5 of the National Strategy for Plant Conservation talks about having at least 10% of the country's ecological habitats effectively conserved. So it's kind of similar to the National Biodiversity Policy and also the National Physical Plan. And again, it mentions limestone and quartz hills as important habitats. And then it provides some recommendation about how these areas should be protected in future, how they should be studied. You need to have surveys done, enforcement need to be strengthened, and then those that remain unprotected should at least be gazetted as permanent reserve forests under the National Forest Act. So these are some of the recommendations. So a little bit more on the National Strategy for Plant Conservation. There's also this target of having 50% of the most important plant areas protected. And as we've discussed earlier, limestone hills are definitely important plant areas because they harbor a lot of diversity and endemism as well. And then we have the Environmental Quality Act 1974. Most people are familiar with this act because this is the act that talks about EIAs, or environmental impact assessments, right? So what activities need to have EIAs? They are described under this Environmental Quality Prescribed Activities EIA Order 1987. So they list this prescribed activity order lists out all the different types of activities that require EIAs. So if it's not a prescribed activity, then you don't need an EIA. But if it's in the list, then yes, you need an EIA. So quarries are specifically mentioned as an activity type that requires an EIA, and it mentioned here limestone quarries require an EIA only if the quarry is within 3 kilometers of residential area. So what does that mean? So if you have an isolated limestone hill far away from any residential area or industrial area, then you might not need an EIA for that quarry. Yeah, so this act actually is not so much about conservation, it's actually about human health and safety. why they require an EIA for quarries near residential industry areas, that they're worried that some people might get hurt or there's pollution, whether it's air pollution, noise pollution, whatever it is. So it's more about making sure humans are not harmed by the quarry rather than the wildlife. Okay. And there's also this garis panduan on penentuan zon bahaya di sekitar Bukit Batu Kapur by JMG, the Jabatan Mineral and Geoscience, and it talk about how, again, this is about human health and safety, where you have restrictions in terms of housing and so on that is located near to limestone outcrops. So and they classify the limestone outcrops according to the risk factors. Some would be high risk, in which case then the houses need to be further away. If it's low risk, then it could be closer to the hill, right? So I think that's quite straightforward. And then there's something called geoparks, which is generating a lot of interest right now. So I think we need to differentiate between the international kind of initiative, which is the UNESCO Global Geopark. And in Malaysia currently, we only have one geopark, which is in Langkawi. But there's also what we call National Geopark, Malaysian National Geoparks, and we have two geoparks declared recently, one in Gunung Jerai and the other one for the Kenkita Valley, right? So the National Geopark, there's not that much information currently available, so I can't really comment much about that. But with regard to the UNESCO Geopark, there are some guidance in terms of what kind of sites qualify, right, to be geoparks. There's a definition there. You have some clear aims there, which is for protection and also sustainable development, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't actually provide any kind of protection to the area itself just by declaring a geopark, but actually each area may have its own protection status under existing national law, right? So the geopark status doesn't provide protection, but maybe the limestone site is already part of a national park or forest reserve, or maybe in some cases not even protected yet. So that's why you shouldn't confuse the geopark status and the legal status. Yeah? Just because it's a geopark area doesn't mean that there's any legal protection. Right, so I think this could be one of my last 2 or 3 slides already. So what are the key recommendations based on what Jaime has said, what I have said, and also what we know about limestones in Malaysia. So we need to have a network of limestone hills protected, not just a little bit here, a little bit there. We need to actually look at it holistically. So we need a national strategy looking at what are the plants and animals found on different limestone hills, what level of protection do we need to maximize the protection of existing species there? Otherwise, we end up allowing certain species to go extinct. Remember that little exercise that we did, different species and different hills, right? So we need to do that at the national level in order to make sure that we don't lose out on any species, right? And then based on that, then you can decide which hills can be protected, which hills can be used sustainably, maybe, low impact use, maybe for tourism and so on, and then which you can actually quarry because you're already confident that you're not going to lose any species by letting them quarry. And for those areas that have been identified for protection or sustainable use, then you need to have management plans drawn up, and there are some guidance available at the international level in terms of how you want to draw up those management plans. And Jaime has already mentioned on subterranean or subsurface limestone quarrying or underground quarrying, right? So this should be the normal practice within the industry, not the exceptional, right? We only have a few examples right now of where limestone quarrying is done underground. We need to have the industry shift towards more underground quarrying and leave the hills alone. Yeah. And we should have a national center for the research, education, and awareness on cave and karst. This is something that MCKC as an organization is pushing for, and we are actually proposing Batu Caves as the location of this limestone center because it's near to KL, and Batu Caves actually happen to be the best studied limestone hill in Malaysia and has a high level of diversity and endemism. And finally, on the tourism side, these activities should be controlled carefully with strict monitoring and enforcement, and also following international best practices. So yeah, I mean, if you want to know more about these international best practices that I mentioned, then you can have a look at the ICN guidelines, right? They have one guideline for cave and karst protection. It's quite old, 1997, I think, but they are in the process of renewing it. I believe it should be coming out this year, so keep an eye out for that. And then there's also the guidelines for geo-conservation protected and conserved areas. So geo-conservation is wider, broader, not just about cave and karst, but other kinds of geological features as well. And more locally, we have the Batu Caves Guidebook. It's a very good book. I like to shamelessly promote this book because I think it's probably the best introduction to cave and karst in Malaysia right now. You can get it from MCKC. The hashtag's there, or you can contact the organizers of this talk in order to get a copy of it. It's for sale, but at a very reasonable price. Right, and then for the benefit of the students, I've listed out the key references that I mentioned throughout the talk. So please go ahead and get more information, read those papers. They're all very informative. So thank you. And with that, I hand over back to Dr. Rose for Q&A.
Okay, thank you, Surin, for the informative and comprehensive presentations, especially on the policies and guidelines. Yeah. All right. So we have some time for Q&A, and I would like to also take a bit more time since we started a bit late due to some technical issues earlier. We may not be able to answer all questions, but the rest of the questions that we cannot answer now will be answered in our submit. So please stay tuned and follow our page, MCKC page. All right. So I would like to go to the first question now. So the first one that I have is from Kevin Chong. Okay. Typically, quarried limestone would leave an empty land. We can see from Google Map that they remain barren, example, western edge of Batu Caves, Gunung Rapat, and others. Can these barren lands be rehabilitated, either for a limestone flora botanical garden or artificially create a lowland forest? Can any of you answer that, please?
Okay, I get it, I mean. All right. Actually, there's hardly any work done in terms of limestone restoration because you think about it, it's a piece of rock, right? If you have ever tried to grow anything rock, you'll know that it's a tough job, right? You need soil, you need nutrients. So on the limestone hills, over time, the nutrients are collected within the crevices, all the cracks and little holes. Some soil is deposited there. That's what the plants are surviving from, right? But if it's just a bare piece of rock, then there is no nutrient for the plants to pick up, except some rare plants that maybe can survive on the limestone itself. The limestone dissolves, right? So maybe it can pick up some nutrients from the dissolved limestone, but it's a tough job. So I don't think anyone much has done work on that because I think the more worthwhile effort have been trying to protect the existing habitat. People at FRIM has also done a lot of work on ex situ conservation, which is, before the quarries, before the limestone hills are quarried, they take the plant, bring it back to their lab, they grow the plants off-site within the FRIM grounds, and then, try to keep the species alive in that way. But I don't think that there's been much attempt in terms of trying to get those plants back on the hill again. But maybe in future, more will be done towards that because, as we are losing the hills, then we need to look at restoration.
All right. I hope that answers the question. Jaime, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think I have anything extra to say. I think Surin basically hit the nail on it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a few questions as well from the YouTube live. So one is from Mai Tan. Is maintaining water quality also part of non-monetary value of limestone?
I think that's a yes, right?
Yeah.
I think keeping water quality is always something that we all have to do, not only on limestone but elsewhere too.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
but sorry, just one quick comment on that. I think in Malaysia, at least, most of our water sources don't come from limestone areas, because we actually have the option of sourcing water from upstream areas and all that. Because in some other countries, they have no choice. They actually get water from limestone areas. You get what they call hard water, right? So you boil water in your kettle, you get this thick layer of limestone in your kettle, but we don't really have that issue in Malaysia.
I think the only place in Malaysia where water comes from limestone area is probably in Perlis. Some of their water, not all, but some of the water do come from limestone area.
All right, so we move on to the next question, yeah? Okay, this question goes to Jaime. Is there any good example of cave management and sustainable tourism exploitation from the tropical region that we may learn from? It's from Lim Session.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Is there any good example of cave management and sustainable tourism exploitation from the tropical region that we may learn from?
Honestly, I don't know of any. I think what was happening over at Batu Caves, at the Dark Caves, the cave was managed pretty well. I think Mulu is managed relatively well too. I don't know of any others. I think the problem with this region is that we don't have the human resource to actually properly manage limestone area, either for tourism or for biodiversity management. There's just not enough expertise in this region. So a lot of the areas are not protected, are not managed for limestone. A lot of times the limestone areas are within forested areas, for example. It's managed for the forest but not for the limestone. Perlis is an exception because quite a large area of the Perlis State Park is in limestone, but still it's not very well managed now.
All right. Hope that answers the question. So next one is from you on Quake to Jaime as well. How will underground mining affect the limestone or dwellings above ground?
Yeah. When you mine underground, typically you would dig out. So it's an open cast mine. So there should not be any effects to dwellings on the ground, unless the dwellings happen to be very close by. But normally when they do this kind of mining, residential areas are pretty far away normally. So there should not be any kind of effects to residential areas as far as I know. Anything you want to add to Surin?
Well, maybe on the hydrological side, because as we know, there are a lot of underground passages. Some of them may be water filled, at least seasonally, right? So, yeah, I guess that not much has been studied in terms of how if you quarry on one side, would that affect the hydrology on the other side? Will it cause like sinkholes or something like that? But I mean, at least from the above ground biodiversity point of view, the impact is much less. I mean, we're not affecting the hill.
Yeah. It's not the perfect solution, but it's the best solution that we can come out with at the moment.
Okay. All right. So I hope it answers the question. Okay. So I think the next one maybe goes to Surin, yeah, from Nizam Hassan. So far, what is the effectiveness of the Garis Panduan Pembangunan Kawasan Batu Kapur by Jabatan Perancang Bandar dan Desa in new rancangan tempatan towards conservation of the caves? Any improvement?
Well, I mean, I haven't really, I don't think anyone actually studied that in detail, but just by general observation, if you go past limestone hills, I mean, how many limestone hills do you know that have got adequate buffer area? Hardly any, right? So I think just by that observation alone, you can conclude that the great majority of the hills are being developed without following the garis panduan. And that's one problem in Malaysia as well, because a garis panduan is just a garis panduan. If you don't follow it, you don't go to jail or you don't get fined. So tak payah ikut lah, right? So unless it's a law, people are not going to be very serious about it.
Okay. It's a bit sad, right? Okay. All right. Next question from M. Anthony. Yeah? So I think both of you can answer this. And I like this question, actually. I have never tired of this. What can we do as citizens to prevent future deterioration of our natural heritage?
Shall I start first?
Yeah, very good.
Well, I think everybody has a role to play. I think individuals has a role to play. You don't have to join MCKC or Malaysia Society or whatever. It's good if you do. Be active in this particular issue. Get to know more people who are already working in this field, and I guess just be active. Get more information and then see what you can do. I mean, I think everybody has a way to contribute. When I first started all this, basically I just wanted to go caving and have fun. But it all changed once I started knowing about all the destruction that's happening to limestone hills around the country. And you start surveying caves. For me, it was cave surveys. I started exploring and surveying caves, and then you get to know caves better. Then you can share your surveys with people. You have a document that tell people this, physically this thing is here, and this is the proof. You see. So if your interest is in birds, look at birds, and then if your interest is in geology, look at the geology, whatever that interests you. So I think that's the best way to do it. Surin?
Yeah, I agree with Jaime. I think it starts with information and knowledge, right? So you need to know what it's all about first, right? So educate yourself. Information is available. Buy this book. And then once you have information, you can get involved, right? So, and the involvement can be at many levels. So I mentioned just now, when you have a local structure plan, there is a public participation process. Get involved in the public participation process. Get involved when there is a public participation in the EIA process. If you don't agree to the activity at the limestone hill, then you need to submit your inputs during those public participation process. You can join other people who are involved in cave and karst conservation. You can join MCKC. With our membership is only 20 people right now. So there are more people in this group than MCKC. So you can join us and help out, right? So many ways to do it actually.
Okay, I agree with both of you. Thank you. Okay, so I continue with the next question from Dionysius Sharma. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. Okay, Jaime, from your experience, once a paleontological or archaeological discovery has been made in a cave, how interested are state governments in supporting the conservation of such caves? Is federal government interest and support easily secured? What do the challenges lie?
Hello, Dino. How are you? Normally, I do not contact state governments first, honestly. What I do is I contact people who are in the field. I think Ashen, one of our friends, Ashen, is a paleontologist. If I find something which is interest other groups, I will contact them. And then I will let them actually contact the right people in governments. So I really don't know. From my observation, it does seem like as if it takes a lot of work to try to convince them to do something about it. That's from my observation. Yep.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, I think we still have time for another 2 questions. All right, I would like to take this question from Nizam Hassan again, yeah, for both of you. All right, what is both panel reaction on planning of substratum underground development in Kuala Lumpur as a display of the current development of MRT network system?
Surin, you want to say anything about it?
I think you need an engineer to comment on that, because I mean, both of us, Jaime and myself, we are mainly looking at the biodiversity side. And for KL, most of the limestone is underground, right? So we don't know what biodiversity still exists underground, because when you have an above ground portion, so let's say in the KL area, the best example would be Batu Caves, right? It's a living kind of ecosystem. Why? Because you have bats, they bring, I mean, they go into the caves, and then they have the bat droppings. The bat dropping is the energy currency. It's like the sunlight in the cave. So without that bat guano, nothing else lives. So if you're talking about the limestone that's totally underground in the KL underneath the building and all that, I mean, there's no entry of energy in those cave passages underground. So in that sense, I think generally dead, except for maybe some very specialized bacteria or microorganisms that can actually live without any external source of energy. So in that sense, we wouldn't worry too much about the limestone areas underneath KL from a biodiversity point of view, but maybe the engineers are concerned about construction of tunnels that may lead to collapse or sinkholes and all that. So that's more an engineering issue.
Okay, thanks, Surin and Jaime. Okay, one last question. I think we are really running out of time, and I'm taking time now. So it's from Lim Sishin. One question to Surin again. Any of the policies or acts or regulations can prevent what will happen to TNB Nenggiri area? I'm sure it means the dam, the coming dam in Nenggiri.
Well, I think, to be honest, I'm not too sure what is the status, because you see that's a long process, right? So if the EIA has been approved, and I think it probably has been approved, then they're going to go ahead with the project. So in that sense, that's really not much more as a citizen, as a member of the rakyat, that you can do about it, because the time has passed in terms of actually, objecting to the project. I mean, we have already seen many dams being constructed. I mean, in the late 90s, for example, in Selangor, I mean, this is not concerning a limestone area, but there was a lot of objection against the Selangor Dam project, but in the end, the government went ahead. But on the plus side, in Taman Negara, there was a proposal in the 70s and 80s to construct a huge dam called the Tembeling Dam. But because there was enough pressure from the public, they actually stopped the dam from going ahead. So who knows? I mean, maybe even if the EIA process has been, approved, but if there is sufficient objections, then maybe the politicians may take note and still stop the dam.
You want to say anything, Jaime?
No, I think Surin covered it pretty well already.
All right. Okay. So I think that's all that's all the time we have for today, and I'm so glad that the webinar went well. And I thank both Surin and Jaime for sharing a lot of information, and I also learned something from here. But before we close this session, I would like to again, like Surin mentioned earlier, shamelessly promote our book. So I'm sharing my screen now. Just to show you the book. Can you see the screen? My screen?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So, okay, all the questions that we have not managed to answer, I'm sorry about that. We will gather all the questions, and also we will do a summary on the findings of this webinar, and we'll put it in our submet, social media, our Facebook page. And also, if you have any questions regarding anything that any activities that we are conducting, you can contact us at our page. And at the same time, if you're interested to buy our book, okay, on the Batu Caves, like Surin already mentioned, you can get in touch with us by using this email, yeah, query.karst@gmail.com. Okay. With that, thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you again in another activities or webinars, and tune in to our Facebook pages for more information.
Dr. Rose, somebody suggested a group photo. I don't know whether we want to do that or not.
Okay, all right. So I am totally forgotten about that. Okay, all right. So group photo. So who is going to do that?
You.
Me?
Yeah.
How do I do that? Okay, I need to go to.
You better get one of the UM students to do that.
Out, yeah.
Yeah, get one of the students to do that.
Yeah. So any student can help me with this?
Yes, I can help screenshot the screen, yeah.
Okay, you go ahead, Rahimah, yeah? Okay, can see faces here.
All right.
Are we done?
I'll be screenshotting in 1, 2, 3. Again, please. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
All right. So thank you, and I hope to.
Nice to be here, guys. Thank you thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Dino.
Thank you all. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you. Have a nice holiday.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, Jaime. Ross, Surin, Prof. Zubaid.
Bye, sir.
Bye.
Hey, Dino.
Thanks, Ka, for coming.
Hi, Don.
Thanks, Don, for coming.
Hi, Sen.
Terima kasih semua.
Great stuff. Thank you.
All right.
Prof is here.
Your head, you followed from Pasir Salah. Your head seems similar to the fellow from Pasir Salah.
Wait, how come I just see your bottom inside your nose? Why your camera at the bottom?
You are using handphone.
So good
Well,
to see you, friends.
I think it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, Sulaiman is here.
That's very good presentation.
Yeah. So altogether, how many altogether?
Hey, Dino, please join MCKC. Come on, brother.
I will. I've been.
He doesn't like caves, lah.
Hey, come on, lah. I've been.
As long as he pays the fees, it's okay.
Yes. Please pay the fees and extra.
Okay. For your sake,
you don't have to come for meetings, okay?
Okay. I pledge to join.
The turtles in underground caves. You know, there are turtles in underground caves.
Yeah, Prof, can find turtle fossils maybe, yeah?
Hey, can find turtles lah, live turtles there.
No, live turtles underground, in the rivers.
In case
so we going off or not?
Notocadis platinota lah, a lot.
Oh, you think so, huh?
Yeah.
We found some lah. I think I should send you some photos.
Yeah.
I don't know how to ID them very well lah.
When we were doing the Perlis work, remember we used to get quite a few in the caves?
Yeah. Even now, even just a couple of years ago, I found a soft shell turtle over there.
Oh, okay.
I don't know which one, but I Have to get it ID'd lah by people
Just
around
send
here.
me pictures lah. ID for you, no problem.
I thought you busy lah.
Yolah.
Okay, guys.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
See you guys. Thank you.
Take care.
Hey, thanks, Shah.
Take care.
See you, man.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye, bye, bye.
I just kept
Bye,
quiet
guys.
here lah. Don't want to say anything.
I'm glad you didn't see anything lah. Otherwise, kacau lah.
Your job to save Mak Surat. Your job to save Mak Surat.
Kantan first.
Kantan.
Yeah, man.
Okay, bye guys.
Okay, see you guys. Ciao.
Okay, bye.
Hey, thank you so much, Dr. Rose. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rose and the team. Thank you.
It's
Very
quite tiring, moderating.
Yeah.
Better
Very
to be
successful session.
better to be panelists.
You was the panel in one of the yesterday's session.
Yeah, that's tiring as well. All right, so
Well done,
thanks
thank
everyone. So
you.
Nasha,